all my presentations that y'all are recording like have all these memes on them. So it's like professional development is like all these weird. All right, cool. Okay, welcome everyone. Yes. Oh yeah. Go ahead. Yeah.
Is it you have mic?
The mic is on my computer.
Okay. Hi everyone, welcome. This is our first 2024 Fall Professional and Career Development Program. Most of you or some of you already attended some of the seminar series. So just to let you all know, this is one of the 6 seminar, and as I said, is the first one. So we will be offering 6 to 7 seminars, and if you attend 4 of those, you will get a professional and career development certificate or micro credential badge. There is a list of all these programs in our website. You can look or just communicate with us. So our today's first seminar is on beyond and basics of elevating your academic CV. And as we all know, CV is the most important thing, I will say, but there are so many small details. Even start from like what is the difference between CV and resume. Sometimes we think these are two same, but there are slight difference. So you will heard all about it today from Dr. Jesus Romo, who is our assistant professor at UTSA in molecular microbiology and immunology, and his research is mainly with host microbe interaction. He is working with fungus and how fungi colonize in gastrointestine and how it interacts with bacterial infection. And he is also expert on several aspects. He is a specialist in bioinformatics, microscopy, tissue culture technique, and obviously molecular biologist. And most importantly, Dr. Romo is a UTSA alumni. He is did his master, doctorate, both from UTSA, and now he is a professor here. And he also did lot of mentorship to undergrad and graduate student, and he is also CIMAR certified mentor. So thank you, Dr. Romo, and you all are welcome. And we will hear from Dr. Romo now.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. Is that better? Is that really? Oh, weird. Great point. All right, let me try this. So let me share. I'm just gonna go ahead and share the entire screen. I think that might work better instead of like just the PowerPoint alone. So let me try this again. Oh, you're gonna add one more line? Okay.
Sorry, I'm just adding one more line for the people who are out of UTSAs, but from UT system, other institute. So this is the first time we are offering for whole UT system postdoctoral community. So I hope you all will enjoy, and please communicate with us if you need anything. As you know, I'm Dr. Madhumita Joshi. I'm Director for Postdoctoral Success at UTSA. Please contact me if you have any question. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you so much. So thank you, everyone. I am very excited to be here. I love working with these programs here at UTSA. So today, I'm going to talk to you about specifically the academic CV. And I'll tell you why it's academic. Obviously, that's my background. But I want to get started by getting to know you. So for those of you on Zoom, and for those of you in the room, please either go to menti.com or scan this QR code. So we can do a couple of activities here before we get started. I want to get to know who you are, why you're here, and so on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to exit out of my presentation, go to the Menti website. You're going to see the QR code there again. So if you didn't get a chance to scan it here, you can scan it there. So let me share my other, here we go. Nope, that's not what I want to share. Okay. Escape. Come on. There we go. All right, so, okay, there we go. Awesome. So this is menti.com. I love this platform. If you haven't had a chance to use this, I would highly recommend it for engagement. Tim, can you see And the screen? Okay, fantastic. So the first question is, why are you here? I want to learn, again, what your needs are and hopefully try to address them as we go along this presentation. So what I'm seeing here, obviously in this setup, the larger the word, the more responses related to that word, right? So people want to be here to learn about just CV. I guess some of you are in the job market, which is fantastic. Growth, right? Knowledge. So what I'm getting from this is that a lot of you, and we'll find out where you are at this stage of your career, but you're interested in how do you translate what you're doing now so you can get a job afterwards, right? And that really is what this distills down to, right? How can you really sell yourself so you can put the best version out there, right? Regardless of what career trajectory you're pursuing. Wonderful, thank you so much. So people want to learn. They want to learn how to organize their CV and how to improve it. Fantastic. All right, so don't exit out of this. Stay in Menti. I have several questions. So I also want to know what career stage you're currently in. Grad student, early level, postdoc, senior grad student, and so on. Okay, so we have all stages, which is fantastic. So I will tell you that this session is really, I put it together with all these populations in mind. Right, these are the people who are going to be looking for that next stage. If you're early grad student and you're here, fantastic. I really don't think there's, the earlier the better that you start working on your CV, and I'll tell you why that's important in a second. But okay, it looks like we have good representation at all three stages of the career. Fantastic. So now I want to know what career path you're interested in. How many of you want to, maybe continue in academia, or maybe you're looking at industry and government jobs or other, right? This includes things like science communication, consulting, and so on, right? A PhD really shouldn't be restricted to just those three organizations. There's so many things you can do with a PhD, right? So, wow, okay. This is probably the first time ever that I've seen the majority of the people want to go into academia. Usually industry is a big one. So this is fantastic, great representation as well. What we'll do is we'll compare what a resume looks like for each one of these, what a CV looks like, and so on. And now I'm going to ask you the hard question. How do you currently feel about your CV? So if your CV looks more like on the left, put a pin on that picture. If you think your CV is at a good place, put a pin on that picture. Okay, good. Some of you feel like your CV is pretty well structured. That's fantastic. Hopefully you'll learn a little bit more, ways that you can improve it, right? Some of you maybe are here to learn how to organize it, right? What to focus on in the CV. So fantastic, right? So we have a little bit more of people that already have a CV. So I hope that today I'll give you some things to think about in regards to how do you improve that aspect of it, right? But we're also going to be providing resources for the people that maybe are just starting, right? You're at a different stage. You're thinking about now making a CV, right? So what is that going to look like? All right, fantastic. Thank you so much for sharing that. So now let me go back to my PowerPoint here. We're going to do a couple of activities. So those of you on online, we're going to put some documents in the chat in a bit, and I'll guide you through this activity. The rest of you here in the room will do it in person. So let me start off by saying, as you heard Madhumita introduce me, I am an academic. The reason why I'm telling you this is because I do not have a background or experience in industry or government, okay? So all of my career has been in the academic path, right? We saw the majority of people are interested in that path, so the CV should be helpful to those individuals. But what I usually do during these sessions is that I bring in examples of what does a resume look like for industry? What does it look like for government? And as a group, we compare and try to identify key differences between them, right? As a way to try to help you really differentiate depending on what you're trying to do, right? So session goals. Ideally, we meet all of these, I hope. So I want to just provide an overview of the academic CV and its structure, right? I think this is key here, show you how to make it stronger, right? If you go anywhere online, you can look up a template for a CV, right? What helps you differentiate yourself from, oh, it's still doing the same, okay. Swap, awesome. That works?
Yeah.
Okay, good. Okay. I want to help you differentiate yourself from others, right? When you go into these job searches, you're going to be competing with sometimes hundreds of candidates. Some of the places where I interviewed for faculty positions, there was one faculty position and about 600 applicants, right? So how do you differentiate yourself from everybody else, right? So I want to give you ways to highlight and strengthen your skill set on your CV. Again, identify these differences between academic, industry, and government CVs. My CV actually has a little bit of elements from a couple of them because I just feel like that my CV, that format works better for what I want to show people. And then towards the end, this could be an entire session, but I want to give you some tips on career preparation for those of you, regardless of the stage that you're in, who are interested in, what am I going to do, right? What's next? All right, so a couple of the points that we're going to discuss. Why is having a CV important? Like I said, we're going to discuss differences between a CV and a resume. I have two activities planned during this session. The first one is identifying items that should go on a CV and items that should go on a resume, right? Because they are very different. We're going to talk about strategies for maximizing the impact of your CV. When somebody reaches and grabs your CV, right, you want to make sure that they see the best of you, right? So I'm going to show you what are some of the things you can do to make that happen. And then we're going to have a little bit of a longer activity of evaluating the different types of CVs, right? I want you to leave here today, hopefully picking up some ideas on how can I make my CV better, but also knowing that there are significant differences specific to the industry that you're looking at, right? And then I'm going to give you a couple more things regarding targeting your CV, right, or your resume. For industry and government, it has to be targeted to the job ad. And that's one of the most important things, right? For academia, usually that's not the case. Right? Academia can be long, and I'll talk about these other differences. But for other positions, it has to be targeted, and we'll talk about those differences. And then at the end, leave you with some career preparation tips that I give all of my students and that I also discuss in other workshops, right? So let's start going through why is your CV important and why should you always be working on it, right? How many of you update your CV every time you do an activity? Not many people, right? If you're not updating your CV every time you do something, you should at least have a place where you're documenting that, right? Why? Because time flies. By the time you need your CV, you've already missed a lot of things that you've done. You will forget things. And oftentimes, people actually want to see timelines, right? They want to see how much time did you spend on this position? How many hours was that training, right? How long was it? So keeping track of what you're doing in real time is one of the most important things you can do as you're building your CV. The other thing is that it helps you track, right, your accomplishments and your progress, whether you're a postdoc or a graduate student, right? You're being evaluated under very specific metrics, right? If you're a grad student and even a postdoc, you're being evaluated by research and publications. That's what's going to determine whether you graduate or whether you get a job, right? At least at the institution where you're at, right? So you want to make sure that you're meeting these milestones. It's great for identifying gaps in your training, right? If you're looking at your CV, I often tell my students to, identify the career path that they want to pursue. And then try to figure out what skills do I need to get there, right? And does that match what your CV currently looks like? Oftentimes it doesn't. So you have to be very proactive about acquiring these skills, right? It can also assist you in setting up your goals. I'll talk later on about organization and give a shout out to another session that we've done here before about time management and organization. It helps you align your goals and figure out what do I need to do to move on to that next stage, right? If your CV is up to date and you're always working it, you're always going to be ready for opportunities. And if you're in the academic setting, you know that sometimes these things pop up out of nowhere with a very quick deadline, right? A week, 2 weeks, your advisor found this great fellowship, but you have a week to submit it, right? You don't want to be working on your CV at that time. You want to be focusing on the higher impact items, right? Whatever research statement you need, whatever it is, getting your letters together, right? The CV should be ready to go. You should just have to do very minor tweaking to align it to whatever that item is, right? So again, jobs, fellowships, networking. It's great to share your CV with others, right? As you're kind of going through your career. Any requests from your PI? Sometimes when I'm writing grants, sometimes I need my student CVs and things like that, right? So you want it to be up to date. It's also key for requesting letters of recommendation. Remember, people have to write things for you. And unless you have a very well-structured relationship with that individual, they're not going to know everything there is to know about you, right? And even if they do, them having your CV helps them make the letter stronger. They can highlight specific items, not just say how cool you are, right? So again, these are, I think, very important reasons why you should always be working your CV. And it doesn't have to be like every single day. It's every time there's an item worth, right, putting on a CV, you should do it right away, right? Don't wait. And again, it also allows you, if you're constantly updating and looking at CVs, it allows you to stay up to date. Formats sometimes change. We know technology has been changing, right? Now there's new artificial intelligence that scans CVs, right? When you're applying for jobs, you need to be aware about all these things, right? There are some fantastic resources out there that tell you how to use keywords, targeted keywords, so you can pass these initial screenings, right? That's not my area of expertise, right? But I will at the end give you some tips on go find this. It's important, right? So stay up to date. All right, so there's very key differences between a CV and a resume. And the reason why I keep bringing up resume, usually when you think about it, you know a resume from, well, I'm applying for a job at a fast food restaurant or whatever. They might ask you for that. But the reality is that resumes are used in government and industry jobs. The CV appears to be unique, for the most part, to the academic setting, right? So you need to understand the differences. So the first one, length, right? An academic CV can be long. I've seen some academic CVs that are 80 pages long. That is ridiculous, right? But they can be very long because you have everything you've ever done related to your academic service, publication, accomplishments on there, how many people you've trained and so on, right? But a resume targeted at industry or government usually is pretty short and to the point, right? 1 to 2 pages, right? So you don't have a lot of room, right, to list every paper you've ever published or every research project you've ever been on, right? You have to be able to distill that information into high impact items. And we'll talk about what those are in a second, right? The other thing is the content, right? Like I said earlier, a CV is comprehensive. It basically has everything you've ever done on that document because there's really no limit. Now, there are specific, and also I can give you these slides if you want. So yeah, I can give you these slides, not a problem. Yeah. There's no limit, right? There are specific fellowships and like NIH sometimes has page limits on your bio sketches and things like that. But for the most part, there's no limit for the academic CV. Put everything on there, right? But for a resume, it has to be concise, to the point, right? So look at these key elements. Focuses only on the most relevant experience and skills, right? You can say, I published this paper. Okay, so what, right? What skills did you gain from that? And how are those skills applicable for this job that you're going for, right? The purpose, right? They have very different purposes, right? An academic CV really is just a compilation of everything you've done for you to keep track when you go for tenure, right? When you're maybe moving institutions, faculty evaluations, postdoc evaluations, whatever it is, you need to have that on there. But for industry and non-academic jobs, again, specific qualifications for this job, right? So hopefully you're picking up on the theme that you have to target your skill set to that job ad. Most important thing, right? So you need to know it, everything there is to know about this job in that ad, you need to know because you need to use those same keywords in your resume, okay? The focus, again, academic credentials, right, for the CV. What papers have you published? What grants have you gotten, right? Those are the academic credentials. That shows people you're an expert leader in this field, right? For the resume, very different. Emphasizes skills and work experience. Again, you keep hearing this word skill, right? Is publishing a paper a skill? I mean, maybe you have to do some writing, right? But you can distill that publication into a variety of skills that would then be applicable for that job ad, right? And can you customize it, right? Can you target it to the job? An academic CV, like I said earlier, usually you don't target it. You keep it as is, you send it in like that for every academic job, because that's just the way it works in academia. For industry and government, it has to be tailored for that, not just for the organization, but for that specific job ad, okay? And there is a version of this in the academic world. A bio-sketch, when you submit any NIH grants, you're required to submit a bio-sketch. And in that bio-sketch, you are given space for a personal statement. Some people just say, this is what my research is, right? But that is a space where you have to target your research and your expertise to that specific grant call from the NIH. That is the ideal place to do it, right? But for the most part, people just submit their CVs as they are, right? So again, emphasis on specificity for that job ad, okay? All right, so let's do something called the think, pair, and share. So we'll do this online. You're gonna have to do it by yourself, unfortunately, because we can't open breakout rooms. Here in person, you'll do it together alone, and then you'll get together with somebody. So take 1 or 2 minutes to maybe write down some things that you think usually only belong on a CV versus some things that only belong on a resume. So take a couple minutes, right? Think about it on your own, write it down, and then I want you to discuss with those around you, see if those things match. And then I'll tell you what I think those differences are. Okay, so we'll take about 6 minutes or so to do this. And then, go ahead. Yeah, do whatever you need to do. I don't know why it's flipping back and forth, but the people online, think about that by yourself and then drop what you think in the chat. What's specific to a CV only and what's specific to a resume only. In the next activity we will. Yeah. Yeah, you can start talking. Oh wait, you gave them my answers. That's okay. That's okay, Tim. It's okay, Tim. Don't look at my answers. Yeah, you can start talking and think about it. Collaborate, discuss, what do you each have? Oh. I think it's this room, Tim. Okay, good. Oh, okay. Cool. Is that it? Yes. Okay, awesome. I promise you I will not exit this anymore. It was just at the beginning for the mentee. Okay, I don't hear talking. Discuss. What do you think? No idea. Just think. Well, what are some things that you think only belong on a CV? I already. Publications, right? Usually, yeah, publications. Okay, somebody said conferences that you attend. Yes. Okay, that's so we're talking right now about only on the CV, right? So conferences. Somebody said full list of publications. Anything else? Yeah, methodologies, right? Instrumentation skills, right? RNA-seq, right? And things like that. That usually goes on a CV, aligned with your paper sometimes. Anything else? Mentoring people, right? So notice I said usually, right? So mentoring, so like my mentoring on my CV, it goes by year, undergrad, grad, dissertation committees that I'm on, and you know, timelines that you're a chair of as well, all these things. So very detailed, right? There's a variation of that. You can reword it, right? And we'll talk about some of those things in a second. Okay, so mentoring. Is there anything in the chat, Tim, that you can see?
Yeah, we have invited talks.
Invited talks, yeah.
Teaching experience.
Teaching.
Awards, outreach activities.
Outreach. Fantastic. So that's usually for a CV, right? Those are things that usually only belong on a CV, right? Of what you imagine, your teaching, right? Your mentoring, your publication, your grants. What about things that only belong on a resume? I kind of gave you the differences and what you have to focus on. What do you think some of those things are?
Like Microsoft skills.
Like actual quantifiable experience, right? Right. What else? You could put potential areas of interest, and I'll tell you. So the version of that is a career objective statement, right? Where you will see yourself. You know, what are your expertise and how do they align with what you want to do? Okay. Anything else?
Previous job position.
So previous job positions, yes, definitely you have to let them know where you were before, but you wouldn't put like, again, publications or teaching. You have to distill it more into what are translatable skills for this job, right? If you were a PI in a lab, that's leadership, team management, right? You have to sell it that way. Is there anything in the chat, Tim?
Previous of insight, job experience, specific job experience, project experience, collaborations.
Yeah, so those are interesting, right? Like you imagine that you can talk about project experience because that translates as skills, right? So you can name specific project, but really, really focus on what skill set, right, am I bringing to the table from undergoing this collaboration or working on this project, right? They usually like to see numbers. They like to see things that are quantifiable, okay? And when I say they, I mean industry, government, academia. You have all the room in the world. You can make your CV 98 pages long if you want, right? Don't do that, but you can technically, right? So let's talk about some actual, like, everything you said is correct. Let's get more specific, right? So these are things that I thought about in terms of what is the difference, right? So comprehensive list of publications, obviously for a CV, right? Fellowships, conferences, everything you brought up, research experience, teaching, right? Notice here we also have service and leadership, awards and honors, a full list of your references. But look at their resume. You have items that sound like they could be overlapping, but they're described differently, right? Career objective, summary statement, right? How does your skill set align with that specific job you're applying for? And more of where do you see yourself fitting, like kind of long term, right? I have a career objective on my CV, but that's my own personal preference, right? You don't have to have that, but you definitely need it for a resume, right? Industry, government. Highlight skills related to the job. That's why reading job ads is something you really have to get good at. And if you read, for example, a grant call from the NIH, these things can be pages long, have a lot of details. Putting in the time to really understand the job ad and what they actually want does pay off, right? Because you should be building your resume around that, right? Work experience with measurable results, right? So one example is I increased sales by 30%, right? If you're working in a company that sells paper or something like that, right? They want to see actual numbers, impact. Academia, they just look at how many papers you publish, how many grants you have, money, things like that. Certifications, right? Here, these are specific certifications, right? These include any training, workshops, so like Python, for example. That's a certification. That's a skill that you can use in a lot of these other jobs, right? But they have to be very relevant to the project. Again, you only have 1 to 2 pages usually, right? You can't list every single certification you have. You may have to choose, right? And you have to choose the ones that actually align. And then project-based experience, right? Actually, what did you actually do, right? Hands-on, and what were the results of that, right? So you have to be very, very specific in these areas. Again, you don't have a lot of room. So let's talk a little bit about how do you maximize. Again, I'm talking about CV because this is the academic side. That's my experience. But some of these items can also translate, right? So how do you make your CV or your resume even better, right? Some of you said earlier that you feel like your CV is pretty good. Let's try to make it even better, right? So how do you maximize the impact? You really have to sell yourself. This is both true in the academic setting and industry, government, right? Like what should they hire you over the other 599 applicants, right? Be strategic about how you organize your CV or your resume. There's a couple things to keep in mind here. The recruiters and reviewers, right? When I say reviewers, I'm in a search committee right now for a bacterial pathogenesis position, right? There's a lot of applications that come in, right? You have to read sometimes hundreds of these. People get tired, right? And if you ever reviewed a grant, you know people get very upset if the formatting of your grant is not easy to read. So think of the reviewer, think of yourself looking over hundreds of CVs or resumes. What would make it easier for you to be able to read, right? For grants, they don't, they recommend that you don't do word walls where everything's single spaced and like tightly packed. That's very exhausting for the eyes, right? Think about this as well when you're putting together your CV or your resume, right? Put important information at the top, those things that you want them to see. At some point, they might just skim your CV or your resume, right? Because they're tired or because they just don't have the time. So if there's something that you feel sets you apart, something that you want them to see, you got to put it in front of their faces, right? That has to be the first thing they see, okay? Focus on transferable skills. Yes? A template that you have to build? That's a fantastic question, right? So for some government jobs, you have to use specific templates that they provide. Is that what you're referring to? Yeah. Yeah, for those a little bit trickier, right? I think because I have never filled out an application for like a government job, I can't walk you through the specifics. What I would say is that if they give you room to explain, and prioritize, right? There might be categories that, they want this category first, right? What's the best part about that category? Like, what do you want them to see? So if you don't have a choice in how you structure it, definitely pick the things that stand out. That's what I would say. But that, you're right. I mean, that is a challenge, right? How do you make that different? Good. Again, transferable skills, right? How can you reward the things you have on your CV right now, for example, to make an industry resume, right? So this is from, I love the show The Office. So this is, the example is sold copy paper at a paper company. The more refined version of this, which is also from The Office, coordinated and implemented receipt, storage, and delivery of over 1.5 billion units of inventory. And that's individual sheets of paper, right? That's a joke on the show. But again, you can reward your skill set and what you have on your CV to make it more targeted, right? Distill it. What is the skill, okay? Quantify your impact when possible, right? So that example I gave you earlier of you increased sales by 30% because you did X, right? If you can use numbers, even better. They like it, right? Pitfalls. I mean, this is a big one, right? Typos, formatting, like I was saying earlier, if your formatting is hard to read, people are not going to want to take a look at your CV, right? Or your resume. This really lowers the excitement for your application. I know it doesn't seem like a big thing, but I've been on some panels where people just don't like the structure or there's these mistakes, and whether you like it or not, that does give you a different view of that application because it looks sloppy. You didn't put attention to detail, right? And that's not a good look, right? And again, another reason why you should always be working on your CV and not do it last minute, right? Or your resume, not do it last minute. And then I put on here Goldilocks, right? Goldilocks and the three bears. You can have too little and you can have too much. You got to find the sweet spot, right? What's not too hot, right? Or the bed that's not too big or too small. You have to find that sweet spot for your CV and for your resume, right? Again, some of you have done so much training that you have so many things you could put on there. You have to be specific. You have to pick the high impact items and the ones that align with the job ad. You cannot put everything on there, right? So there is certain thing as too much. I think 98 pages for a CV is too much, right? 1 page, depending on the job ad, but 1 page is a little bit low, right? Maintain regularly. I mean, I've said this before. Really try this. It does make a difference. It makes it easier for you when you go up for job applications, fellowships, and so on. And use networking platforms like LinkedIn. That is the only social media that I have. There's some good resources on there. It's a good way to connect with people. It's a good way to network, right? People, from what my students have told me and what I've read online too, people are sometimes happy to look at your CV. I've done it for others. I've done it for international graduate students. They send me their CV. Can you give me some feedback on it? If I have time, happy to do it, right? Utilize these platforms. And I think very important, especially for those of you who are doing research, you have to have these other platforms. Your Google Scholar account has all your publications. Your Org ID, right, has all your publications, all your positions. ResearchGate profiles, all that stuff has to be up to date, right? It's another way of, if I can't list all my publications, right, you can find them here if you wanted to look, right? But you're not forcing people to read through all your papers, right? So I think all these platforms are very useful, especially when you're thinking about your resume, right? All right, so let's evaluate some resumes. We'll take about 6 minutes or so to do this. We can do this online as well. Tim, can you drop those on the chat? There's 3 pieces of paper. Each one of those is a different resume, resume or CV. One is from academia, one is from industry, one is from government. Okay, these are examples you can find online. I brought those here. Go over them. Get together in a couple of groups and try to identify key differences between these. Right, they are very different from each other. Like I said, we'll take about 6 minutes or so. You don't have to read every single detail. You can kind of skim through and see what is the structure of differences, right? Did you want to copy here? I mean, yeah. Okay, good. You got them online? That works well. Yeah, you can talk, again, look over them. Is there anything that stands out as different one from the rest, right? I know, right? Again, I only know academia, but these are the things that I have friends in industry and government, and these are the things I do check in with them about what are some of the differences. So I think these are good examples. The blue one is government. The other one is neurosciences, academia. And then the last one is industry. Yeah.
The Ellen applied.
Yeah. Oh, no, that's academia, yes. Okay. Yeah. What do you mean? Yeah, for your CV, like your academic CV, you do have to, it's good to have references on it. Like, who are the people you can think of that if somebody calls them up, they can give the best reference about you,
For CV.
Yeah. Yeah, I have that on my CV. Usually they're faculty mentors, postdoctoral mentors, and so on, right? They don't ask for that anymore? When I interviewed 2 years ago, they were still asking for that stuff and letters, yeah.
It's a reference. Yeah, nowadays sometimes they do, like when you're filling it, that there only you get.
Yeah, you can put their name and they'll get an email or something like that, yeah. Where can you get that format? I just got it online. I can send you the links if you want them. My CV looks basically like that. And I just kind of went through and I made the format myself, so I don't have like a template. I'm happy to share my CV with you if you want to. Yeah. Yes.
For the institution columns, if I don't have a particular certificate for that kind of teaching experience, can I still put that in CV or I should?
So this is for a CV, right? If you don't have a certification to teach, have you taught a class?
Yes.
That's teaching experience, right? While you may not have a teaching like a certification or a teaching degree, you're still doing academic teaching, right? All of that stuff counts. So what I have on my CV is obviously the course. I have like 2-3 bullet points of like the main things about that course. How many students are in the class, things like that, like the semesters that I was taught, all that good stuff. Yeah. And again, that goes back to the numbers, right? Like if you put, there were 100 people in this class, right? Numbers do matter, right? If you just put that on there, there could have been 2 people in that class, and that teaching is very different from large classroom setting, right? So those things do matter.
I have a question.
Yeah.
So, the academic CV, this is for like more of a faculty, right?
Yeah.
What if you were going for admin?
For admin, that's a fantastic question. I would imagine that's different, and I wouldn't be able to answer that question, right? So this is because of the grad students and postdocs, right? This is academic, like faculty. If you're going for like a technician level job or something like that, like research assistant professor, that's what they're looking for. Admin level or maybe like program directors and things like that. That's a great point. I mean, I don't really know.
So,
That might be something to consider. Yeah.
Yeah, so mainly what CV and resume, whatever you say, is to sell yourself.
Mhm.
You are to just show. It's not like to show what you know. It's show like what they want. So like when I apply for UTSA, I didn't give my 50 publication list.
Yeah.
Because there's no meaning for my this job. They are not going to read my molecular biology publication.
Yeah.
Yes, I got selected 5 or 10 I gave,
Sorry
but
about that.
mostly
Did
the
you guys need
skill.
help with anything by chance? Oh,
We're good. Thank you.
So for admin job, you will be telling like what you are doing for it. And specifically, again, he is saying what job needs.
Yeah.
If job needs for you like a research related integrity, then you put something related. You did biosafety, you did research something.
Yeah.
But job need for me is like postdoctoral. So I did how I help postdoc for my previous. And I give only couple of my research publications because those publications doesn't make any sense for
Yeah, that's a very good point, right? So I said earlier, and I should definitely correct this because I that's something that I wasn't really thinking about, right? When I think of the academic, I'm thinking like that faculty track or whatever. But that's a great point, right? For program directors, right? Other, like you said, admin, I believe, right? Your CV is going to have to be more targeted, right? Even if you're in an academic institution, that is a fantastic point. Yeah. Yeah. All right, so let's share for a couple minutes. What are some main differences you found between the three? And if there's anything in the chat, Tim, you can also jump in. Some things that stand out to you. Okay, the order of the sections. What do you mean by that? Give me some examples.
Like, for example, the place that we need to put the applications
Uh-huh.
for the work experience for the research projects
Okay.
depends on the CV.
Okay. Where do you highlight your research, right? Where do you highlight the projects that you're on? Okay. Anything else? What about the format? Yeah. Very streamlined, very clean, right to the point. Yes, I agree with that. So, right, for industry, very streamlined, very concise, right to the point. You mentioned earlier, and I'm sorry, what's your name? Eva. So you mentioned earlier about that, about government applications, right? There's a government example there, right? It looks more like, right, on there they're asking you US citizenship, like all these things that you wouldn't otherwise see in other documents, right? Anything else? Tim, I think.
I think for industry and government service and teaching may not be given full weight as in academic CV. Certainly teaching experiences should not go on an industry or government CV.
Okay.
Teaching skills, detailed publications on a CV.
Yeah, so teaching and publications, the main ones, right? I would argue that depending on the position, the government CV resumes can be more detailed than some of the academic CVs, right? Because it's a very specific position, right? And you have to tailor it, and they have all their own specific requirements. So the best advice I can give you is do your homework, right? You really have to look into this. You can't send the same resume to every position you're applying to because you're not maximizing your chances, right? You have to target it. Okay, maybe one more thing. Did anybody else see anything? Yes.
both resumes have a volunteer option.
They have a volunteer option. Okay, talk about that a little bit.
And so this blue one is the governmental one.
Uh-huh.
Right? So this looks exactly like the template that they gave me in high school.
Okay.
Like literally verbatim, word for word, like having the language skills, the volunteering, because that's what we did in high school.
Yeah.
And in college, and then like awards and achievements. So getting the director's awards,
Yeah.
And then the CV, it's more like I got this fellowship or I got this grant, and it's detailed by like the NIH or whatever.
Yeah.
one, the resume also has that volunteer / leadership activities. So as a treasurer
Yeah.
of, an organization, or like a trainer.
Yeah.
So yeah, these two are very,
There are more similarities.
yeah.
Yeah, so what I would say about the government ones, and Eva, maybe you can speak more to this, because it seems like that's kind of where you're looking. On the websites that I was in, that template is from a .gov website, right? As an example of how you should structure it. But there's an entire application just to generate that. And I think you mentioned that a little bit earlier, right? So, and when I say application, I mean like the way you enter the information, which is what we were discussing with Eva earlier, and it ends up looking like that, right? So, very different, right? Do your research. Talk to people if you can. Ask them for their CVs. What does yours look like, and so on. Okay? Anything else? Anything different that you want to highlight? No? So obviously, there's a lot. I try to distill it down into main differences, but my table ended up looking kind of like this, which is not my favorite, but you're going to get the slides, right? So you can go through these. And I'm not a big fan of very wordy slides, right? So I'm just kind of going to go through a couple of these, right? So we talked about the purpose, right, between a resume and a CV just in general, right? So again, demonstrates qualification, right? Highlighting skills. Notice the length, right? For government, it can be, a little bit more than 5 pages, kind of like the academic one. And it just depends on the job position, right? For the government itself, again, tailored, right? Tailored. Everything's going to be different there. Notice here on their detail for government, and I'm focusing on that because we talked a little bit about the industry and the academic, emphasizes responsibilities, right? Responsibility, specific duties, and qualifications, right? Where you're leading a team, right? Where you're responsible for, right? More information, right? Notice again for formatting for government requires specific formatting. We talked about that. You can find a lot of really good information on USA Jobs. There's a lot of like how do you build a government CV. That's where I got that one. Yeah. So again, if you take anything from this, other than there's a lot of words on the screen and you can read through those, very significant differences between the three, right? 2 of them, industry and government, have to be tailored, right? Not just for the entity, but for the job ad. And I'll tell you how we can do that, right? So let's talk a little bit about targeting your CV. How can you target it for the job ad, right? What should you be thinking about? Again, they are very significant differences. We talked about those a little bit, right? Between academic, industry, and government. You cannot send the same CV, the same resume for these three, right? You have to make them very specific. You need to reframe your accomplishments, right? Or your experience. If you're going from an academic to an industry or government, trained undergrads, right? You led a team of students, right? That's different. That's more leadership, right? Organization. There's all these things you can put on there. There are also international differences in the formatting and requirement for CV. So I'm just specifically talking about US, right? So if you're looking at jobs abroad, you have to do your homework, okay? This is, for me, probably the most important thing if you're not going down the academic path. Align it with the job description. You have to, right? Read those ads, bring those relevant items to the top of your CV. Use the language that they're using in that ad on your CV. You can underscore, you can underline, you can bold it, whatever it is. If they're using specific words for that role, try to put them in your CV. Not just copy and paste, but try to work them into your CV so that they can see, hey, everything we're looking for, I can see them in this. I keep saying CV, this resume, right? Again, do your research. What I would highly recommend, I put a lot of time when I was applying for jobs, look into the company and the organization, not just their name, right? I've seen applications where they get the name of the organization wrong, right? It's already out the door, right? Look into these companies, but really focus in on their goals, right? Most companies, including universities, have kind of like these long goals, long and short term, like what is their mantra, right? What is their main goal as an institution? Identify their values, read through their websites, know what the company's about, use that to make your resume or CV. Use that language, right? Try to align their values with your CV. Obviously not lying, but you're trying to reword so it fits what they're looking for, right? Again, look into keywords related to the job. Nowadays, especially for industry jobs, there's these applicant tracking systems, so ATS. Some people are using different types of artificial intelligence to kind of scan CVs and see which ones are good candidates, right? So you have to make sure that you're using keywords, again, from the ad. Use those keywords, they will help you, right? And you can, I mean, there's so much literature out there, you can look at this. All right, I'm going to wrap up by, hopefully has been helpful, and I'll stick around if you have any questions, but I'm going to wrap up with some additional tips that I feel are useful, just career-wise, because a lot of you are in that trajectory, right? You don't want to be grad students or postdocs forever. You want to move on to that next stage, and having a great CV or resume or knowing how to craft it so that you target that specific ad is crucial, right? But there's other things you can be doing, right? So there's a couple of what I call career tips. This is what I think, obviously my opinion. Be prepared, always, right? The job market in any of those three industries is always very, very competitive. Start looking at least a year before you graduate or before funding runs out. You're gonna need at least a year, okay? Don't wait until you're done, right? With your position, start thinking about what skills you need for that next step. Being a grad student and a postdoc, it's a fantastic time for you to acquire that skill set that you need for that job, right? Yeah, so that's what I meant. So again, professional development, networking with people and so on, right? This is the time to do it. Don't wait until you're done. Use organizational tools to really maximize your experience as a postdoc and a grad student, make the most out of it, right? Use time tracking tools. There's this thing called a weekly meeting with yourself, strategic planning, SMART goals, mentoring compacts, the IDP. If all this sounds foreign to you, it's okay. You can go to YouTube for the grad school. I did a workshop on this, about an hour long. I talk about every one of those strategies for time management and organization. You can watch it on their website. I think they're very useful. Definitely at any career stage, I still use these myself, right? But for grad students and postdocs trying to get that next stage, really maximizing your time and being well organized is going to pay off. Network as much as you can and in different settings. Take those opportunities. If you are shy, you don't like to talk to others, that's okay, right? You can find ways to network with people. Tap into your mentors network, right? I tell my students that my network is their network. If there's anybody that they want to meet or anybody I can connect them with, or we're at a conference together, I would introduce them to people. Reach out to your mentors. See if you can tap into that network, right? Assemble a team, right? Everybody's heard it takes a village, right? It really does. You need a team of people behind you who are willing to show up and support you, right? To get you to that next stage. So you need to identify your supporters early. Who's going to be your cheerleader, right? Who's going to be your expert, right? There's different types of mentors. No one mentor has all categories. No one mentor is perfect. You need to have a team of mentors that perform different roles, right? And if you're not familiar with that, look into it. I also do a workshop on mentoring, and I talk about different types of mentors and things like that. Letters of recommendation, get those early. You don't want those rushed, right? And then lastly, a couple more points. Just be open-minded about opportunities, right? You might have this one job in mind, but are there variations of that might be good for you, right? Think about what can set you apart from other candidates. Everybody's going to go in having publications, having gone to conferences, have gone, working with undergrads, done similar techniques as yourself. What sets you apart from them, right? Think about that. Do a career exploration activity. So in one of the courses I teach for the PhD students, at the end of the semester, they do a career exploration activity where they find jobs that they would like to be in, right? They see themselves in. They do, they reach out to people in those positions and ask them, what does it take to get there, right? And then they figure out what skill sets do I need to acquire and map out a plan of when am I going to acquire those skills so I can have them by the time I'm done, right? Use cold emails, just email people. Most people will be happy to respond to you and answer your questions. And if they don't, guess what? You're back where you were anyway, right? Shoot those emails out. Try to get people for informational interviews. Ask them what it's like to work in that position, right? Not only are you networking with somebody, but you're learning about that position and how you can get there, right? And get creative. Again, your expertise, while you might see it as like it's very specific, I can only go for this type of jobs, there's more things in there that you might also be a good fit for these other types of careers. That's why it's important to know how do you distill what's on your CV to transferable skills, right? So think about those things. And that is all I have. I'm going to show you one more thing because I love this. So this is examples of different CVs. You have some now. This is an interactive CV, and I think this is just taking it to that next level. Can you see that on the screen? No? Okay, I'm gonna have to share it again really quick, and then we'll be done. Okay, stop sharing. Share. Right here. It's okay if it does that weird thing again. Can you see it now?
Online
Can?
in person, in person. You drag it to the second screen.
Oh, okay. Why does it always do this? Okay, let me do this. Let me end my slideshow. Because I think it's probably the coolest CV I've ever seen in my life. So this is a video game CV. So you can actually scroll on the screen and you'll go through and basically it's like a little video game. It tells you their expertise, what they're a fan of, their skill set, and so on. I'm not asking you to make this, but you can get creative with your CV a little bit. Okay, well, thank you so much for your attention. Happy to, QR code for the survey. I almost forgot. See? All right, last thing.
Question
Yes, Tim.
from online.
Yes.
What's the best template for a CV with advanced AI CV features?
Oh, that's not a question for me. I'm not really sure. So I've heard different things, right? For trying to hit these like keywords, right? That they scan. I've heard people that if you can fit them into your CV, right, from the job ad specific, because that's what they're comparing to, that should be sufficient, right? But I've heard of people that add additional keywords on their CV and then just make the font white so that the person looking at it doesn't know it's there, but the AI that's reading it can detect those words. So then you increase the number of words. I don't know how legal that is. I've heard people do that. I'm not telling you to do it. But yeah, that's definitely out of my area for this like AIs. We don't really use that in academia. I think that's more of an industry thing. So definitely, again, I wish I could give you a better answer. Definitely ask around, read articles. There's definitely literature out there. And while I'm answering questions, there's also a survey for this session. So please use this QR code to fill it out. Tim, more questions?
When you are a solo author on a publication, should you state your name for every publication? Is there a preference for year being on the left or the right side? That's two questions.
Okay, so when you're sole author,
Solo.
yeah,
Yeah, solo.
you should, wait, what's the question again?
When you are the sole author of in a publication, should you state your name for every publication?
Yeah, you should definitely. I mean, if you're one person, I mean, it doesn't really take much, right? The way that I have them on my CV, I have every author, title of the publication, a journal, date, things like that. And I have my name bolded so they know where I am. It doesn't really take that much extra effort to just bold your name and if you're by yourself. I would be okay with either way. Like if I had a solo publication, I probably wouldn't do it because that's me, right? So yeah, I think it doesn't take that much longer to just do bolded, but also I don't think it's really required if you're the only author. And then the second part, whether there's a preference.
For a year.
Yeah, I've seen some where like the NIH has very specific guidelines on your bio sketch. Like you have to do these very specific things. If it's one of those institutions or organizations and they have those guidelines, definitely follow them. If it's more for an academic job, unless it's stated on the job ad, I have not seen that be a thing, right? Mine are on the left, right? On the left, and then publication. Actually, sorry, for publications, they're within the section, right? So it's like authors, right? In that order, title of the publication, I have the date, followed by the journal or a DOI number.
And
Yeah.
last question, and then we can wrap up.
Okay.
Any suggestions for someone who has strong research and service but did not get much teaching opportunities other than guest lecturers?
Yeah, so it depends what you refer to as teaching, right? In the academic setting, mentoring undergraduate and graduate students, that can be also be sold or reformatted as teaching, right? If you have time, you can also do things like CERTL, right? You can do these workshops online, you can do these MOOCs online, like these videos and courses online to kind of beef up that teaching training experience. So while you may not have actual in-class training experience, you can still show that you did get some training that you want to apply. And if you're going for faculty positions, you'll have to write a teaching statement. And it's okay for you to say, I don't have, this experience, but I've done these other things, and here's how I would see myself in the classroom. That's what I would say. Yeah. Cool? Good?
That will make you guys ready for teaching, so even if you're not going to teach.
All right, well, thank you.
I will add one more thing, what I learned actually recently, that CV is, though it's important to sell us, but it's not going to give you a job. It will take you up to interview. So make sure, as Dr. Romo said, all the keywords within the job, go there. So if it is checked by computer or human, so it will take you up to interview, and then next is yours. And also second, other advice I will say is, actually a ninth grader STEM ambassador program, they ask that question, what we will lose if we don't pick it? So if you can answer that in your CV, clearly that I have this excellent thing, you guys will lose it if, or you guys will be interested. That is the important thing also.
Great. And I know we have to head out, right? But while we're putting stuff away, I'm right here. If you have questions. Tim, do I just stop recording? I don't want to mess it up and then it not be recorded.
Give Dr. Romo a big hand, please.
Oh, thank you. I appreciate it.